Something outside my tent was unzipping it. Slow, careful clicks in the dark. Like whoever was doing it had all the time in the world and no fear of being seen. Milo was pressed against my ribs, vibrating with a low growl I'd never heard from him before. The zipper moved another inch. Then a voice, so close it felt like it came through the fabric itself, breathed, "Don't turn around again." Earlier that day, I'd taken a few days off in late winter and driven north until the road turned to packed ice and silence. No radios, no service, no other headlights. Milo rode in the passenger seat like he always did, nose twitching at every cold gust leaking through the vents. I wasn't looking for scenery. I wanted one empty patch of forest where nobody could, accidentally, wander into my weekend. The turnout I picked was the kind of place you only notice if you already know it exists. A widened shoulder, half buried by plowed snow, and a leaning wooden post with a faded number on it. My truck was the only vehicle there. Milo didn't jump out when I opened the door. He sat stiff in the seat, ears forward, staring into the tree line. I laughed under my breath and tugged his leash, and that's when I saw the creek. It ran behind the turnout like a pale scar through the woods, frozen hard, wind scoured smooth, the kind of ice that doesn't hold footprints. And right where the creek met the snowbank, a single set of boot prints came off the ice and into the forest. Fresh, sharp-edged, no soft crumble at the corners. It looked like someone had stepped off the creek and into the snow less than a minute ago, and then kept going. I told myself it was a hunter using the creek as a walkway. That was the sensible answer. The creek was the easiest path through deep snow, and I'd done the same thing before without thinking about it. Still, I found myself whispering, "Hey," like I didn't want to startle whoever might be nearby. My voice died fast in the cold. I should have turned around then. I didn't. The whole point was to be alone, and admitting I wasn't felt like losing the argument with myself. I got my pack, clipped Milo's leash, and followed the shallow depression of an old snowshoe track that led away from the turnout and deeper into the pines. The snowshoe track was old, partly drifted in, partly crusted over. It made me feel better. If someone had been out here recently, that track would have been clean. Milo stayed tight to my leg, sniffing in short, anxious bursts. 15 minutes in, the old track crossed the frozen creek. The creek was silent and black under a skin of ice, with tufts of dead grass trapped underneath like hair. That's where I made my first mistake. I turned my head to look behind us. Not because I heard anything, because Milo did. He stopped dead, nose lifted, and stared back along the trail the way dogs do when they're listening to something that isn't sound. I followed his gaze. Between the trees, far enough that it could have been a trick of vertical trunks and shadow, there was a shape that didn't belong. A person standing too still. I blinked and it was gone. I stood there in the cold like an idiot, waiting for movement that would prove I'd imagined it. Nothing moved. Even the wind felt like it had paused to watch what I'd do next. I didn't call out again. I tightened my grip on Milo's leash and kept going, telling myself the forest plays games with your eyes. The clearing I chose was another 10 minutes in. A flat, open patch ringed by black pines, with the frozen creek curling along one edge like a boundary line. It looked untouched. No tents, no fire rings, no chopped wood. Milo bounded ahead, then slammed to a stop so suddenly the leash snapped tight. Boot prints. Not scattered, not old. A fresh set walked straight off the frozen creek, into the clearing, and ended exactly where I was about to pitch my tent. They didn't continue on. They didn't turn. They didn't loop back to the ice. They just stopped, toe to heel, perfectly spaced, as if someone had stood there and then been lifted away. I walked around them slowly, trying not to disturb the snow, searching for the explanation print. One extra step, one slide mark, anything that said human instead of wrong. Nothing. If you left that spot, you'd have to either walk back onto the creek or vanish. Milo's tail was low, his body stiff. His eyes tracked the tree line as if something was moving just out of sight. I hated how fast my brain started rewriting reality to make it manageable. Maybe the person stepped back into their own prints. Maybe the wind erased the exit. Maybe the ice didn't show anything. All of those could be true, technically. What I couldn't make fit was how crisp the prints were. The clearing was shaded and cold, but even in shade, fresh prints soften within minutes as the snow slumps. These didn't slump. They looked preserved. I set up anyway, because the alternative was admitting my whole solitude weekend was a stupid idea, and hiking back out in fading light with my pride dragging behind me. I stamped down a platform, threw the tent up, and worked too fast, hands clumsy in gloves. Milo paced a tight circle around me, like he was trying to keep me in the center of a map only he could see. When the tent finally stood, I tried to reset the world with routine. Fire, food, a warm drink, normal things. But the woods stayed too quiet. Snow quiet is one thing. This was different. It felt like the forest was holding its breath. Milo raised his head and stared into the dark pines. I followed his stare and heard it. A slow exhale. Not wind through needles, not my own breath. A deliberate breath, close enough that I saw a faint bloom of vapor in the air beyond the firelight. Then nothing. I stood so quickly, the camp chair tipped backward. "Hello?" I called, aiming for casual, landing on thin. "You out here?" No answer, no movement. Just the crackle of my fire suddenly sounding obscene, too loud for the silence around it. I let the fire die down until it was mostly coals and ash. I packed my food away like a man performing rituals to convince himself he's safe. I zipped Milo into the tent with me, even though he hated it, because I didn't want him out there where I couldn't see him. I remember thinking, if someone's messing with me, they'll get bored when I don't react. That thought lasted maybe 20 minutes. Then the footsteps started. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Slow and lazy, circling my tent at a distance where the snow was deeper and louder. Milo's growl came back, deeper now, like it was vibrating through his chest. The steps stopped beside the tent wall near my face. A guyline twanged hard, the whole tent flexing as if someone had plucked it like a string. The fabric pressed cold against my cheek. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The zipper began to move. Click, click, click. The sound of teeth separating, controlled and patient. Not a frantic animal, not the wind. Someone was opening my tent from the outside. Milo surged forward and slammed into the fabric, barking. The zipper paused. That's when the voice came, right at the gap, quiet enough that it felt intimate. "Don't turn around again." My blood went cold, because it wasn't just what he said. It was the certainty in it, like we'd already done this part and I'd failed some test. I forced my hand to the zipper, eased it down 2 inches, and flicked my headlamp on through the slit. A man was crouched inches from the fabric, so close the light hit his face like a flash. He wasn't wearing gloves. His bare hands were sunk into the snow on either side of the zipper, palms down, like he'd been kneeling there for a long time. His fingers looked too pale, too still, as if the cold didn't matter to him. His eyes shone wet in the beam. He smiled without warmth. Then, very carefully, he put 2 fingers into the gap and began dragging the zipper lower from the outside. Steady, patient. Milo exploded, hurling himself at the tent wall, snarling so violently the fabric bucked. The man didn't flinch. His free hand pressed into the tent, and for a second, I thought he was going to push his way through. Instead, his fingers found my wrist through the fabric, like he knew exactly where it would be. Nails bit down, hard, sharp, hooking through my sleeve. Pain snapped me fully awake. I yanked back. The nails held. Milo hit the wall again, and the man's grip tightened, calm as a clamp. I did the only thing my brain could produce. I kicked out and tore sideways, ripping my arm free with a burning scrape. Then I lunged for the opposite side of the tent and shoved through the fabric flap, half falling into the snow. The tent behind me buckled with a sudden, heavy shove. Snow sprayed up in a cold burst, like something had landed against it. Milo shot out after me, leash dragging, barking into the dark. We ran. Between the trees, the night was thick and directionless, but the old snowshoe track was a slightly darker line, and I followed it like it was a rope. Behind us, boot steps crunched, not frantic, not fast, just matching pace, keeping pressure. Every time I stumbled, the steps stayed the same distance away, like he didn't need to gain ground, like he knew I wasn't going anywhere except where he wanted. The turnout finally appeared as a darker gap ahead. My truck was a shape I'd never loved more. My fingers fumbled the door handle until it gave. I shoved Milo inside, slammed the door, and turned the key with hands that didn't feel attached to me. The engine coughed, caught. My headlights snapped on and washed the trees in harsh white. For a heartbeat, he was there, standing in the center of the path, where the snowshoe track met the turnout. Not running, not even breathing hard, just waiting, as if he'd never needed to chase at all. Then the beam shifted, and he was gone behind the glare. I didn't stop until I hit a plowed road, and the tires finally stopped skating on pure ice. Milo trembled against my leg, whimpering, the cab smelling like wet fur and panic. I kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see lights, movement, anything. The turnout was empty. Then, in my headlights, I saw it. A single set of fresh boot prints crossing the plowed road behind my tire tracks. Perfectly spaced, too clean for churned roadside snow. They came out of the ditch, crossed the asphalt, and stopped dead at the center line, right where my headlights would hit if I looked back. No prints on the other side, just the message of them, waiting in the light, like someone had stepped there to watch me leave, and didn't need to go anywhere afterward.